Welcome to the Master Passive Income Podcast, where we talk about investing in real estate rental properties with a special focus on making enough money so you can quit your job and live the dream life. And now, here is your host, Dustin Heiner.
Hey guys, welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate rental properties so you never ever have to work a job again. Now, in today's show, I might actually be interviewing one of my students, and in fact, he's one of my longest students, one of the students I've actually been working with the longest. In fact, I started working with him before I even started Master Passive Income. He was actually a friend at my church. So we're going to church and met, and then we just started talking about business and told him what I did, investing in real estate. That's literally how I started Master Passive Income, was just telling friends and family members that I was doing this, and they'd ask me, well, can you show me? And so I did. And so this gentleman's a fantastic guy. I started working with him, and then he just started buying properties after property. So I want you to hear his story of how he did this. And he's actually living in Alaska, living the dream life right now, buying properties and fishing all the time and having a great time up there in Alaska. And so I want you to hear all about his story. I also want you to learn how to invest in real estate. Text the word rental to 33777. That's the word rental, RENTAL, to 33777. And I will literally get you, it literally comes to me, and I will get you my free real estate investing course. So, okay, guys, let's jump into today's show where we talk with a fellow student, Chris Baldwin, about his adventure and investing in real estate. And now he's able to live in Alaska, living the dream life. All right, let's start today's show. Chris Baldwin, thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me, Dusty.
Now, you and I have known each other for a little while. In fact, we went to the same church and we got to know each other, and we just started talking about investing. You know, our families getting together, having dinner and stuff, started talking about investing. And then you said, you know, I really would like to start investing. You also love fishing as well. So we hit it off really, really quickly, and hunting and all that sort of stuff. But what I remember about you is that you were just gung-ho, and you're saying, you know, I'm going to do it. And what I found, a lot of people, when they get started investing or they want to invest, they don't really put their full effort into it. And you absolutely have done that. You're destroying the ability. Like you're making it so it looks easy. Watching you do this, it looks easy. So let's talk about all this sort of. Okay, so when you and I first met, did you have any properties? Did you have anything? Were you investing at all?
Not at all. I had a life mentor that had a couple properties, and he mentioned that, you know, earlier in life, maybe a year or two before I met you. So that seed was kind of planted, and it was, you know, when I met you, I just graduated college, was ready for the next phase of my life, and it was just the perfect time to meet you. And the stuff you were telling me about this, and then got a hold of your book, and that was the very first investment book I read, and that just got me started on this path.
And so you got my book, you started reading, and we were just talking more and more about just investing in general. And what got you over that hurdle to say, you know what, I really am going to do this. I'm going to start investing and buy a first investment property. What got you over that hurdle?
Well, I've always been kind of an adventure seeker, kind of a risk taker. Used to skydive and ride bulls and rock climb and do all that stuff. And each phase of the life, I was kind of doing a different hobby. So this kind of came in right at the right moment. And it just kind of, I transitioned right into it, and it just kind of filled that gap. And just taking the risk wasn't really a big thing. It was just getting out and doing it. And the main thing that really kind of encouraged me was I'm a charter captain, and I love doing what I do. I love coming up here. I love taking people fishing. And I just got married, and I just, you know, I told my wife that I was going to keep doing this right till I graduated college, you know, and then I graduated college, and I really didn't want to give up fishing. So this real estate initially was just something to allow me to supplement my income so I could support a family and still do what I loved, you know. So it was more to support the lifestyle that I really was dreaming about and the lifestyle that I'm living now. And if it wasn't for the passive or the rental income coming in every month, I don't think I'd be able to support my family doing what I do. So it's been a really great thing.
For everybody listening, what Chris, when I first met him, what he would do, he lived in Fresno, but then would drive all the way up to Alaska and fish up there, or be a charter boat captain for a fishing company over there, Barnoff Fishing. And I've actually been there 2 or 3 times now. We try to get up there and fish with Chris, because Chris and I are good friends, and we try to go fishing because it's amazing fishing up there. The company that works for is terrific, as well as Chris is a phenomenal fisherman. I mean, you want to say, hey, where do you want? Hey, Chris, where are the fish at? They're right there. And you go and you get the fish. It's phenomenal. So what was great was he would drive up to Alaska and then fish and then come back. But as we started talking more and more about investing, I was sharing with you that I was investing out of state. Was that interesting to hear that somebody can invest far away? And how did you get to the point where you said, you know what, I actually want to do this, where I'm investing out of state?
Sure. And what you pretty much planted was the dream. It's possible to do this, and so the investing out of state was more of when I started kind of going down that path. It's like, okay, so I have this dream. How do I accomplish this dream? Because we were in Fresno, California, and that's a really tough place to kind of do buy and hold, where you're going to cash flow off these properties. And so you mentioned out of state, and actually got me in contact with kind of your network that you had, and which was awesome. So I just kind of fell right into the wide path that you've already kind of led there, and ended up buying a place in Ohio, and still own it today. And that kind of got my feet wet there.
So big question. Have you ever been to Ohio?
No, I've never seen the place. And, honestly, I don't know if I ever will, or I don't know if I ever want to, but it's been a great thing for us. I mean, 5 years I've owned it, and pretty much I've made, if the place burned down and I don't get another penny going forward, I've already kind of made enough that I made my money back on it, so it wouldn't be a loss at this point,
Yeah.
And so that's a great place to be,
That is a great place. So how long ago did you buy that first property in Ohio?
I believe it was about 5 years ago.
Okay. So from 5 years ago, you've been making cash flow every single month. What was it that got you, or how did you get the financing to be able to pay for it? Did you save up all the money in cash? Did you put a down payment down? How did you do that?
Well, I've part of the strategy here, and the key to it is living frugally, and that's something we've always done. My wife is the most frugal person that I have ever met, which is great, but so we both live frugally, and so we own everything outright. We don't own our cars. We pay cash. We drive older cars. I mean, look, I don't dress nice, as you can see, and so when you do that, you end up having a surplus of income, because you start, and then you kind of get ahead of your finances, right? Because now you start saving instead of spending, getting credit card loans or getting loans for cars. So you're kind of spending future money. So instead of that, you start saving in that extra money. So we had a nice, we just had some money in the bank, and we actually paid cash for the property. And, it wasn't a very high price point, but so owning it outright kind of minimizes a lot of the risk, just because you don't have the bank wanting their payment every month. And so it minimized the risk, and it was a good way to kind of get started, get our feet wet.
Yeah, and I love buying at a lower price point. If you're going to buy a $300,000 house, you're not going to make that much money. And even if you did, if it's not rented for 1 month, that's a lot of money in a mortgage payment you're going to have to fork over. Then might eat your entire year of passive income that you normally would make. It's going to eat it all up. And that's why we love buying. And for everybody listening, like if you're on the coast of America, like on the West Coast or East Coast, and you're thinking, wow, where do you find houses for like $50,000, $30,000 or whatever? They are out there. They are out there. And in fact, my students buy them all the time. Okay, so when you get a property, how do you buy a property without ever even visiting the state, without even seeing the property? How do you actually buy one without being there?
Trust, lots of trust. And it all comes down to just having somebody on the ground that you could trust. And that's the one thing from a distance that I've learned, is that because you're not there to see it. If you get a repair, I mean, you don't know I mean, you got to trust that it was really a repair and that everything's right. And so you actually connected me with my property manager out there, and he'd find these places, and we would talk and discuss about offers, and he'd do the initial walkthrough, and then after there was an accepted offer, we would do the inspection. And no matter what I buy, I mean, you got to get inspected. Any kind of property, especially with real estate, hire a professional inspector. Because they're trained to see things that you don't, even if I'm here in Alaska buying a property, I always have an inspector, and I'm the type, I'll be crawling under the house with the inspector, asking them all these dumb, crazy questions, but that's how I learn. And, but from a distance, you really got to have your network, and you got to trust your network. And that is so key.
I agree. And in building that business first, having the property manager, having either realtors or inspectors or plumbers, or having the right people to do the work, that's really the way that you're going to be able to invest really, really far away and not have to fly there all the time. Okay. So then how do you manage a property that is literally thousands of miles away? How do you manage one? And, because you get phone calls at every waking minute. And even when you're not awake, you're going to get phone calls of problems. How do you manage those?
Again, it comes down to the property manager, and that's why you got to have somebody good on the ground, and they're kind of the buffer, so they take a lot of these calls, and he has a budget. He knows that he's just going to fix it, right? And if it's over a certain amount, I'm going to get a call. Other than that, he takes care of everything, and he's great. He has his own network of all the plumbers and so it's really hands off. Just because if there's something that gets broken or gets fixed, I just get on the invoice. He just deducts it right out, gives me all the receipts, and it's that simple. And so it's a great way of doing it. And up here in Alaska, I manage my properties up here, so I've seen both sides of that. And I tell you, it's really nice to have a property manager.
It sure is, especially when they do all the work. And all you do is get a statement at the end of the month. And like you said, as long as they're trustworthy, as long as you trust them that they're doing the work right and doing it properly, you literally don't have a care in the world. It's such a beautiful thing. Okay, so you have one property in Ohio. Where was your second property that you bought?
So the second property we bought was up in Alaska. So the fishing company I worked for, I told them that once I graduate college, I'm probably going to have to get a like a real job, and he really wanted to keep me around, the owner, Chuck, and so he offered me a management position in the office during the wintertime. So I said, "So Amy, I'm actually going to keep fishing. I know I told you that I was probably going to get another job. We're going to keep fishing, and by the way, we're actually going to move up to Alaska full time." So we came up here. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for a couple months while I was looking for a place, and I bought a duplex here in Ketchikan, and that's the place that we live now. So I essentially I moved in, and you get owner occupied financing, lower down payments, you get lower interest rates, and we're renting out the upper, and it's keeping our expenses extremely low.
So then you buy that place in Alaska, and it's a duplex, which is fantastic. It's basically, they call it house hacking. You buy a house where it has a unit where somebody else can rent out that unit, but you live in the other unit. And if there's 3 units total, you have 2 units rented. If there's 4 units total, you have 3 other units rented while you're living in one. And so what's great is, so Chris and I, for everybody watching and on this on YouTube and is also seeing this, Chris and I actually became really good friends. And so I have gone up there a number of times, stayed in his house with he and his amazing wife and kids, and we go fishing. And it's tremendous fun. But if you look at the view outside of his front, like if you're looking at this on YouTube, his view out from his window, that's actually he's looking at right now, you can't see it because he's looking out the window. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. You got the ocean there. You have all these trees and gorgeous stuff. And so house hacking, to get into a place that you're no longer renting and you are having somebody else rent from you, they're paying for the mortgage. You basically, if you do it right, you could potentially live rent free or even make money, which is exactly what you did. So you have a property in Ohio. Now you have a duplex in Alaska. Now you are also managing the one in Alaska, correct? And you were talking about lower interest rates and a little easier to buy. Why is that? Is it because you're an Alaskan, citizen, or like you have a driver's license in Alaska? Is that why?
Well, I actually got this loan through Fannie Mae, which is it's a federal type of loan. We put the 20% down, but if you're buying it strictly an investment, a lot of these loans require 25% down. So, and 5%, but the interest rates, and that's where the real difference is the interest rates are quite a bit higher. I don't know off the top of my head how much higher, but when you're factoring your cash flow, if you look at the interest rate, that's pretty much just your net income. I mean that's it comes right off the bottom line. So lower interest rate just means you're going to profit more every month off it, and so it was a great strategy for us here.
That's great.
So, and
go ahead.
And we do have some expenses. I think it cost us a 1,600 square foot apartment. We'd be paying, if we paid rent, it'd be 1,600, and it's costing us about $400 a month to live here.
Okay. And there are other things like in Alaska, which not every place is going to have something like you need to paint, constantly be painting the outside because of all the weather.
Yep.
Things like that come up, but we just account for those in the expenses. And we just make sure we itemize out expenses beforehand before we buy the property so we know what's going to happen. Now, you're currently living in one unit and you're renting out the other one. And then now, so total, if you did move out and did it again, you have 3 units, basically. Now you continue to buy and get more properties. So what was your next property after that?
Next property was a 4-plex here in town. And yeah, that's a property we just closed on last year. So we've owned it for a year. And yeah, it was fully occupied when we got it. And we actually have the same tenants that we've had. And it's been really good to us. When we first bought it, the return was a little bit low, but the rents were a little bit low as well. So the potential was to up the rents, and that would make it a really good deal. Another thing that we really do that we've done well with our duplex is change the utilities out. So here in Alaska, there's oil heat, and so we got this duplex, and it had a single tank for oil. So that means, everything else is subdivided, but if you have a duplex, you have one oil tank, your owner's paying all the oil because you can't split it. So we got a home energy rebate. We put some heat pumps in, and so that in turn tied the heat to the electric, which pretty much split it out. So without increasing rent, we increased our monthly cash flow by $200 a month.
Just so by decreasing expenses. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you take the 10 grand and, then you do the math on whatever, $200 a month, 2,400. So that's the return on investment. I'm sorry, it was about 20. So yeah, the return on investment was, over 20% just on that one move. So, and that's better than you could. I mean, if you're buying a house, you're getting 20% cash on cash return. I mean, you're doing that. That's out of this world good, So sometimes, and so this 4-plex, there's a $600 a month utility bill that we pay every month, and we factor that in. And so so for me, when I see that, and same thing, they have a single oil tank. I just see a huge opportunity. And so, we put heat pumps in, we could, make another $400 off that. Now that's it goes from we get the rents up to where they should be. We do that. It goes from a good investment to just a great investment. And the whole time you're doing this, you're also, when you start getting to the multifamilies, there's a bit of a cap rate. It's not as much as commercial, but if you up the rents, you're just going to up the value of the property. And when you go to sell it, the potential buyers are going to be factoring their numbers, and they're going to see that the higher rent and the lower expenses, and it's just going to get you a higher price for the property.
Man, so now you have a 4-plex, a duplex, and a single family home. What is your next? Do you have anything else, or do you have another opportunity coming up?
So when I married my wife, she had a house in Fresno. And so we moved out and we rented that out to her grandma for 5 years. And it was a bit of a mistake just because it was. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. Her grandma was awesome. No, not a problem with the tenant. It's just if you live in a place 2 of 5 years, you're exempt from taxes when you sell it. So now we're looking at selling the place, and now we're looking at a big tax bill, which is pretty much all the profit we made off it the last 5 years is going to get eaten up by taxes. So we have options like 1031 exchange. But if we would have sold, we would have avoided a lot of hassle because we lived in it, and, but you asked what's next. So what we're doing is, we're on a good path. I'm doing what I love, and I turned down a big paying job to do this, like paid literally twice as much. I turned it down because I just love fishing so much. And so for me, there's a lot more important things than money. And living up here in this lifestyle is absolutely more important. So we're on a good path. But one of the things that I'm struggling with is it's just taken a long time to save up. I mean, the properties up here, you could buy a teardown for $250, and you're not gonna cash flow off it. So the price points on these property duplexes here are in the mid 400s for something good. So 20% of that is, it takes a while to save that up.
$80,000.
And of course, there's the snowball effect, So we saved up a lot quicker for that fourplex because we had the duplex, and the next property we're going to save up a lot quicker too, and that accelerates it pretty quick, and that's a good plan. But we're also looking at other things to kind of speed up the amount of income that we're able to make. And so one of the things I'm at the point now where I'm able to take the winters completely off. And so that's a great thing, which is also freeing me up to do other stuff. Went marlin fishing in Maui and lived out there for 6 months. And last year we went to Idaho and road tripped all around America. And again, it's that lifestyle that is so important to me. But what we're looking now is I'm looking at possibly building spec homes here in Alaska. Again, I've never, I could read a tape measure, but that's about the extent of my ability. But I feel, and I've learned along that if there's a will, there's a way, and I see a good opportunity here in Ketchikan. And so I believe that's this next winter I'm going to focus on learning, and the winter after, hopefully we're going to be building something. And so that's kind of what I see the next phase. And once you get into building stuff, the sky's the limit. You could really start building. You build single families, you get that down, and then building apartments here. You could do well, I believe.
Absolutely. And I've been to Ketchikan a number of times, and it's beautiful up there. And if everybody doesn't know, Ketchikan is a really big port for a bunch of cruise ships to go by there. And it's so beautiful. People go there just for fishing, and it's a great place. And so listen to how everything Chris has been doing with going to be eventually building, but at the same time having rentals. I mean, my goodness, this is a great market. Now, when you are building the business, when you're buying a new property, is it nerve-wracking to get that next property? Is it something that you have to push yourself through, or is it just kind of internally it's okay for you to do that? Because there's a little bit of a fear factor for a lot of people when they're getting started. Hey, am I buying the right property? Am I doing it right? Am I going to lose money? All that sort of stuff. How do you handle that?
So it just brings me to the thought that not saying I'm courageous, but the definition of courageous is not the absence of fear, but it's doing things regardless of fear, right? And so, then I say that with real estate investing. I mean, we just, we're signing something on close to $500,000 deal, and it's like, that's scary. That's scary. And it was terrifying. And waking up in the middle of the night worrying about it, and just, am I doing the right thing? And we're talking as we're getting to the game time, right? I like where you're actually signing the stuff. And I've talked to other investors here and other friends, and it is scary every time for at least the people, for me and the people that I know well enough to have this conversation with. But that fear doesn't stop us from doing it. And the fear keeps you alert. And I made plenty of mistakes, and there's no perfect property, but being scared is a healthy thing, and it keeps you alert and will potentially keep you from doing pitfalls. We've also avoided some landmine of properties because I put a lot of pressure on myself to try to do this quickly, and it was going slow. And so there was a tension there, and it almost made me pull the trigger on some properties that I'm really glad I didn't. And it was, and I mean, those are agonizing decisions too, but we made the right ones. And I know that because a couple months later, the right property comes up. If it's not perfect, none of these properties are perfect, but they were good fits for us. The numbers looked really well, and we moved. And I mean, I'll tell you in 20 years how well it works, but I think we're on a pretty good path.
Yeah, you're definitely on a good path. I know out of the 30 plus properties that I have, I'd say maybe one or two are perfect. Like outside of that, they're literally either singles or doubles. Like we just, as long as we're getting passive income, as long as we're not losing money on the property and we're making money to provide for our families, we're going to do really, really well.
This duplex, it has a steep driveway, like a dang steep driveway, and steep roads and stuff. They're pretty common here in Alaska, in Ketchikan especially. We're on a rock that just goes straight down into the ocean, so steep roads are common. But here I am from California, and I come and look at this place, and we bought this sight unseen from my wife. I just bought the place; she hasn't even seen it, and I'm like signing the papers on it, So that, talk about courage, but yeah, that steep driveway is something I just completely overlooked, and we've actually had some problems with tenants because sliding sideways down because then the snow comes and the ice, and and then like one time we took my little girl sledding, which was awesome. We went down the hill sledding, but then my tenants in their minivan tried to drive up our sled marks, and it was not a good outcome. So yeah, and they so that was not good. But, again, like you said, it was just you make mistakes, you learn, and you move on. And so we now have a guy that plows the driveway every year, and it's depending on how much snow we get, because people think Alaska, they think it's crazy, cold, but it's it'll snow for 3-4 days, and then the rain will wash it away. So we average temperature in July or in January is like 45 degrees. So snow comes and goes. But it costs us about, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 a year. So, when we first realized how big a problem was, I thought, oh my gosh, I made the mistake of my life and all this, but it actually just comes down to dollars and cents. And, it's our tenants don't have any issues getting up and down it, even with a 2-wheel drive car. So
what other, go ahead.
I had 4-wheel drive, so for me, a steep, snowy driveway is actually something cool. It's a lot of fun.
So, what other lessons have you learned? Can you think of anything from like having a property manager and making sure that they're working well in another state? Any other lessons that you've learned that you can share with us?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've learned. Shoot. Yeah, I've learned a whole lot. I mean, the driveway, we bought. See, here's a good lesson. So we came up here, and Chuck, the owner of this company I work for, he is a brilliant businessman, and he's been just a wonderful mentor of mine. I've learned so much from him, and he's an old float plane guy, so he's owned float plane businesses, and he's built them up and sold them, and so. One day we were going to buy this house, and it was a duplex, and it needed a lot of work. And, we were just like, I kind of feel like we're getting over our head, but that's kind of how I do things. I just dive right in, And so, I was like, all right. And we're down to the final, we had accepted offer, we had inspection, we had everything. We were down at the final. Okay, move forward. As soon as we sign this, I mean, we're buying, the loans going through, everything. We had the loan set up, everything was ready. And we had an hour before we were meet to sign all this. So we had an hour to decide whether we're going to buy this place. We go back over the place, and my wife just says, I don't want to buy it, and so here I am going, well, and again, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and that's maybe another thing is pressure is good, but it could also be bad if it leads you to doing rash decisions that you wouldn't normally make. But I was just going to go through with it. She said no. And so we pushed the meeting back and said we need another day. And I mean, that was a really stressful time. And I had a meeting with Chuck the next morning, and I lay it all out, telling him about all this. And he says, oh, he goes, that's easy. He goes, in a float plane, in the pilot world, if there's two pilots, the rule needs to be 2 yeses to go and 1 no to stay. So if the weather's marginal, if they're trying to decide, both pilots have to agree to fly, but either one of them could cancel the whole trip. And that way you're relying on the intellect of 2. If one person had the authority to override the next, you're just relying on the intellect of 1. When he told me that, it was just like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and I trusted my wife, and I called, and there's all this buildup too. Everyone's waiting for your answer, and it's a big number, big decision, and just to call, and it was a big decision, but it was a huge weight lifted, and about 2-3 months later, this place came up, and this place was just hands down in every single way, aside from the steep driveway, it was a much better deal. And so it was, in the end, just a great decision, and I learned a really valuable lesson there.
That is a huge lesson. I know that anytime, literally just about any single time that I've went against what my wife has said, like, I don't think we should do this. This is not the right decision. And I've gone against it. It's usually come back to bite me. And so that's why God's blessed me with my amazing wife, is to help me to make wise decisions. And so now, from now on, actually, it was a while ago I learned this, because after, time and time again being, I should have listened, or I should have listened then, or I should have listened then, I realized it's so much better to have 2 brains working it out, because I have blinders. Even as, I might think I'm like great at finding properties or whatever it might be, whatever decision it might be, I might be great at it, but my wife has a different perspective, and I might have, I don't say might, I do have blinders on that kind of cloud my judgment. Having somebody from the outside or somebody else that has a different intellect, that, like you were saying, 2 minds coming together have a much better, clear understanding. And so I think also that's even like a marriage thing in general. Like, if you're married, if your spouse says, no, I don't think so, you should probably rethink it. Like, just my strong opinion. And I'm pretty decisive person. And when if I make a decision and my wife says, well, we probably shouldn't, or this is my reason on why we shouldn't do it, I literally force myself to take a step back and say, okay, let me listen to my wife. She's much smarter than me, so let me listen to that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm a big picture guy. Like you said, I'm good at the overall plan, and I could tell you where we're heading in the next 10 years, and just how this property is going to fit into this plan, and all the big stuff, the numbers, the rent, what are we going to do, all that stuff. But my wife is really good at the details, and the converse of that is me being focused on the big picture that I glaze over so many of the details. And on that specific property, my wife was going, hey, these details are a lot bigger of a deal than you think, and these details, I think, are going to make this a tough opportunity for us. And she was absolutely right. And so another guy bought it, and I go, and all those details are still there. Yet he hasn't fixed any of them. So it was just a lot bigger project than we were thinking.
I remember talking to you about that project, and you were giving me all the big, like, we could do this, and my brain, I'm kind of like, well, yeah, you probably could. But then hearing how Amy, her perspective, and my wife's saying much more detail oriented. I'm definitely not, and so she helps with that perspective. So you are a very driven person. Just like me, I'm very, very driven. I can keep pushing. In fact, I remember a number of conversations you and I have had. Oh man, it's just taking forever to find that house. It's just, I want to get another one. I'm just sitting on
the bank, burning a hole in my pocket.
It's a good problem to have. But as you're patient, and as you are you're constantly looking for more properties, a deal will eventually come. It's just being patient and not jumping on bad properties. That's the thing. We never buy bad properties. We never buy lemons that are actually going to be losing us money. We want to find properties that are going to be good investments. And I'll give you an example. So I have students that would say, hey, this one investor is selling like 10 properties all in a bundle. Like, you buy all 10 at once. There's a certain price. He discounted all that sort of stuff. I always tell them, it doesn't matter how many they're trying to sell. That's what they'd like. But you analyze each property as if it's by itself. If there's a lemon in there, even if it's 100 properties and you have one lemon, don't do it. We do not buy any lemons or any bad properties. We just don't do that. And so you're really blessed now that after listening to your wife, your helper saying, hey, we shouldn't do this. Now you have this fourplex that is actually making you money. That's awesome. So any insights into managing your own properties? Because I love talking about having other people manage the properties. What other insights have you seen after managing your own properties?
Well, there's a lot to it. It's a lot of work. I mean, just you have a vacancy here in Ketchikan. There's been a shortage of housing pretty much from the beginning of the town. When you have a vacancy posted, you just get flooded with applicants and people wanting to, and a lot of them are just the vast majority of 9 out of 10 don't qualify. And so just fielding those calls alone is it's just a lot. It's just all day kind of thing, setting up meetings and, doing it. So property managers work, and if they have a great system, I mean, that's kind of what you're paying for, and cause we have we have a property manager managing our property in Fresno, and it's a much larger company, but they have systems that work well, and doing it all on your own, I really, it's hard, but also up here, with the fourplex, the amount of rent that we're bringing in, 10% of that gross, it's a lot of money, so I'm going to spend a lot more time to do that because of the amount of money relative to, how many units we have to manage,
And you have the time too. You have the time and the ability.
And I have the time. Yeah, there's a correlation between time and money. Do I source something out? And there's a huge thing once you scale up, especially, that your time is valuable, right? So if you're wasting your time doing other things when you could more effectively spend that time, like me fishing, I make X amount of money. If I have to take a day off to do something where I could pay somebody, there's going to be a point where it's not worth it for me to take the day off. It's going to be a point where it is. There's some footings here, and we got quoted a couple bids just to replace some concrete footings around $800. I didn't even take a day off. I had a day off. It took me 4 hours and $100 of material. I got it done. So I'm like, shoot, how much? Do the math. $700 for 4 hours of work. And that's another thing about here in Ketchikan is contractors out here are absolutely absurd. In Oklahoma, you could probably get that done for, $200, but up here it was $8. So that high cost of contractors really encourages me to do a lot of stuff myself,
And you have the ability to, because you live really close.
Yeah, I live close. I live 10 minutes away from the property. I've done dishwashers and the garbage disposals and concrete stuff, and just especially with this COVID thing, have a lot more time than money on my hands. So it's just I've been doing it myself, and I see the value now when I'm young and able and I have the time and the resources to do it. It's a great thing just because I'm also learning to do it, and I talk about wanting to build a house, and so I volunteered to help someone build a house. I've 4 months of my life just because the knowledge I will learn is absolutely priceless,
And something I definitely want to touch on, because I firmly believe that if you can learn by working for somebody else, because usually we all taught you work to make money, but how much better is it to work to learn something that you can then make even more money from? So what you're saying is, somebody who's already a builder, who's already done it before, has experience, that will literally show you how to do it. You're not going to, like, if you go to college, you pay somebody to show you how to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. No, you're not actually going to have to pay. You're going to learn, and you're going to be working for him. But at the same time, all the invaluable information you're going to get from learning from him. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And he's close to retiring. This is going to be the last house that he does. And so I said, hey, I'd like to work for you when you build this house, because we went to lunch and he's starting a house in November, and I said, hey, I'd like to work for you. And he's like, because I told him I'm just dumb labor, right? I don't have any skills. So but I told him, I said, that I'm not concerned about money, just because the skills that I would learn is worth way more than way more than anything you could pay me on a paycheck. And so that kind of, and so there's a good chance I'm going to be helping them there. And what that does is that, when it comes time, if I feel if you're going to build spec homes, you gotta have your contractor's license, run a crew and all that stuff. And you could hire talented people that could build a house. But if you don't know what you're doing to put all the pieces together, I mean, that's just, you don't have to know every little detail, but what I'm looking for is the big picture, and I mean, I took a guy, I've been taking a group fishing, the last several days. And the guy has absolutely just made a fortune in real estate building spec houses. I mean, he said he built 135 a year. And he says that he could drive down the street at 30 miles an hour and tell if a house is plumb or not, or something that someone's working on. And he says he's just been known to slam on the brakes, back up, say, what the heck, get the level and go. So it was so he wasn't actually doing the work, but he knew it so in depth that he could effectively manage the people doing the work. So you got to have this knowledge base. And for me, that's going to be this winter. And I don't really have, because of the COVID lockdown, there's really not much else going on. We were going to go to Hawaii for 6 months. I had my wife talked into that one, but I just don't see that happening. So we're staying here in town, and I'll be out in the elements, building a house, hopefully. So
awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much. Do you have anything else that you can add? Anything else that we might have missed in building a business of real estate investing?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned, from being a charter captain is the ability to grow. You don't have to know absolutely everything about fishing to come out here and be a charter captain. I mean, you should. But when I first came, we were doing these camp trips, and we just went out in a skiff, and the idea was to catch a couple fish, go into a camp and have a shore lunch, so that it wasn't about going out and just catching everything. And I remember my very first trip, we caught 2 fish like that. And I was just like, I was so stoked. And, so 9 years later, the production of it, we just catch so much more. It's just the biomass that we bring in. I mean, you've seen it. It's just absolutely insane. And I would never, ever be content or happy with 2 rockfish, And so just the 9 years of growth is really just, just taking me to a whole nother level that I didn't even know was possible. And real estate's been the same thing. And I just think that, and I see it already, I'm not even halfway through my career, or at least hopefully, right. But, I just keep catching bigger fish, and I just see that just growing as time goes on.
And I think everybody should be their entire life. I don't care if you're 20 years old or 80 years old. I would like to, at least I hope to, when I'm as just every single day, constantly learning, constantly growing, and constantly getting better. Because one of my favorite movies is called Tommy Boy. And a line in there, a line in there that always gets me is when the dad says, you're either growing or you're dying. There's no third direction. So I always believe you always need to be growing and getting better. And the experience helps you get better, and you make better decisions, make better buy better properties, and make more money. It's just better as you keep growing.
Absolutely. And part of growing is making mistakes. And if you're scared of making mistakes, you're never going to go anywhere. I have the amount of stuff that I've torn up fishing, and the amount of stupid stuff I've done, the amount of times I've embarrassed myself. I mean, I got stories, right? But that's why you go with an experienced guide, because they do all that stupid stuff with other people, right? So it's just like you said, just move forward, and you're going to make mistakes, but that's part of the fun.
And I absolutely wholeheartedly say and recommend go up to Barnoff Fishing up in Ketchikan. If you can, get with Chris, like specifically ask for Chris Baldwin and fish with Chris. He literally knows so many spots to put you on getting halibut or getting salmon or getting lingcod or whatever it might be. You're like, hey, Chris would ask us, what do you guys want to catch now? Like, okay, let's go get lingcod. Okay, I got a spot. Boom, we get a lingcod like in 2 seconds. So everybody, if you go up to Alaska, if you love fishing at all, you must go to Ketchikan. Barnoff Fishing was great. They definitely take care of me when I'm up there, and it's always fun being with Chris. But he has so many good stories too that he tells us.
And the fishing up there is not always like that, but just
he's trying to manage expectations. He's trying to make sure
expectations are some of the most important things in life, right? That just manages your outcome, is what you expect going into anything. But fishing, is like that too. But yeah, the amount of biomass here in this ocean is just unreal, and going out and just to these wild places and dropping down to this place, and you could just feel that this place is alive with life. It's just so amazing. But yeah, to check us out, exclusivealaska.com. That's our website. And you could book and you could request me. And particularly if you're coming up on a cruise, that's a good time to book. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I'm definitely have to get up there and go fishing with you, hopefully this summer. But it's been super awesome having you on. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dusty.
Now, wasn't that super encouraging to hear Chris's story? He's a terrific guy. I've actually go fishing with him all the time. And I want you to learn, just like he did, how to invest in real estate. He got my free course just like you're getting it. Get my free course. Text the word rental to 33777 and get started right away. All right, guys, we'll see you next week with another great episode of Master Passive Income Show. I'll see you then.